Hey folks, I'm Steph, and today I'm going to be putting some conditioner on my Gym Green Moc-Toe Workhorse. It's pretty simple. I just use some liquid mink oil, uh, stiff bristle brush, and toothbrush as well. So, and I also use a container so I don't spill the mink oil everywhere. Yep, so let's just jump right into this. So I've only been wearing my boots indoors just to get the initial break in, and they've been pretty comfortable and they've already broken in pretty well. And I'm just conditioning these because I'm going on a trip soon, so I'd like to have a little bit of water resistance, and the tongue, especially in some of the side panels, feel dry to the touch, so I think that they could use some conditioning. Just for a little bit of comparison here, I actually conditioned the other boot last night, and this is how it turned out after it dried off a little bit, or after the mink oil kind of soaked in fully. And you can see that the leather got a lot darker, especially you can really see the difference with the tongues and a little bit with the toes. So when you use mink oil, yeah, it's going to darken your leather a little bit. But from my experience, it lightens up a little bit with use, especially with this being a pull-up leather. It lightens up, so that's kind of what you can expect after oiling your boots. So let's just go ahead and jump in. So first I pour some ink oil into a little container so that it's a little bit easier to manage, because when you pour it like this, you have the chance of over pouring and like dropping it everywhere. Yeah, but I usually just use my hands. Be aware though, if you're allergic to mink oil, you might want to use gloves or another kind of application brush. But otherwise, I usually start like with my waxing process. Take your bristle brush, and you just kind of knock the dust off, or any basically dust and dirt or whatever that's on your boots. You just want to knock that off first, and I would really focus on the creases. It doesn't have to be anything too crazy, especially if this is your first time conditioning your boots. There really shouldn't be too much on there, but you want a nice clean dust-free surface to start. And then I take my toothbrush, and then you try to get into the little creases that'll be hard to get to with your fingers. So just dip it in the mink oil and just kind of paint it on there. And for the moc-toes, I'd especially focus on the welt that joins the apron to the upper, because that's a space that water can get in, and also it's kind of hard to get into that crease with your fingers. So really saturate the threads and the little lip that it makes. Alright, so once I have those seams done, I also like to go around any speed hooks because those right angles are pretty hard to get around with just your hands. And there really isn't any rule for conditioning. Like, you don't want to dunk them in oil most of the time, I would say. Be reasonable with the amount of oil you're using, but other than that, it's kind of a feel thing. When you condition your boots, I just do it when the leather looks and feels dry. I'm sure there's a lot of other protocols to use, but for the way that I use my boots, it's not that important for me to have them conditioned 24/7. So you can definitely over condition boots, but as long as you're not like conditioning them every like week or month or whatever, I think you'll be fine. I would say slightly over conditioned is probably better than unconditioned or under conditioned, because leather is a natural product, so it'll crack and stuff if it's too dry. So a little bit too much conditioner is I'd probably err on the side of too much conditioner than not enough, but a lot of that's just personal preference. Alright, so now that I got all the hard to reach places, I just go in with my hand, kind of dip it in the oil and slather it on. If your boots are really dry, you know it'll start really shiny and then it'll soak in. And that's kind of what I found with my other boot that I did last night. So I'm just gonna kind of put a bunch of oil on here and should be good. This process really doesn't take a lot of time. With like wax, it's a little bit more time consuming because you might have to heat up the wax or whatever, but with the oil it just kind of goes on there and it soaks in naturally. Just like with waxing, you know, a little bit of heat also helps, but I find that the friction of your hands as you rub it in usually does the trick. Kind of warms up the leather just a touch and gets that oil to soak in a little bit faster, a little bit deeper into the leather. And if your boots are super dry, you can kind of let them sit and soak for a little bit. Let it soak in the oil for a second, a couple minutes, maybe like an hour or two, and then put another coat on. But it's probably not necessary if you just wear these for casual wear. So you can see the tongue is super dried out right now. So I also like coating the raw edges of the leather here, like where they hit the outside, because I don't know, I just feel like that really helps lock in the oil and lock out water and stuff. And you have to set your expectations with mink oil. It does provide a little bit of water resistance, but it's definitely not a waterproofing treatment. I would just say it's mostly for conditioning and a little bit of water resistance. I'd say more like splash resistance. So definitely temper your expectations. Don't expect this to make your boot a rain warrior or anything like that. But yeah. Go back in with the brush, toothbrush, to get into this little corner here. Mink oil will also soften your leather a little bit. So if you're having a hard time breaking in boots, it could be helpful just to get that initial softening, to help you a little bit along the way. Some people actually do dunk their boots in mink oil. I think Rose Anvil has done a video of that with a pair of Doc Martens. I'm not sure if I would go that far, but you know, if it's just a lot of hell breaking in your boots, I guess that's one way to do it. Also have comments talking about dunking your boots in water. I think that's a pretty old-fashioned way of doing things. But if you do dunk your boots in water, just make sure to condition it after so they don't dry up too much and crack away. But yeah, that's pretty much the whole process. It's pretty quick. And yeah, it darkens your boot quite a bit, especially initially, which can be scary. But looking at them both, the freshly conditioned and then like about a day after, it soaks in and then the colors come back. And then with this being pull-up leather as well, you can kind of, it still has that pull-up effect to where it lightens as you break those conditioners down a little bit. So you still have that. It doesn't take that away. It just kind of mutes it for a little bit until that conditioner really works in and starts to wear out. So yeah, that's all I have for y'all today. Hope y'all have a good one. Cheers. Oh shit.